Hello there, it's Andy Parks from the Washington Times, and I'll be joined by Stephen Dinan, Washington Times Assistant Managing Editor, right after this. You know, as a listener to my podcast, you qualify to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times, and all you have to do is go to washingtontimes.com/Andy. That's washingtontimes.com/ANDY. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Washington Times Assistant Managing Editor Stephen Dinan. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Andy.
Well, let's begin with the story that I just saw. DHS Chief Mayorkas tells Congress border closed.
The Democrats may not have necessarily minded his statement, but you could sort of see the Republican heads were exploding. And Mayorkas, the secretary, is very skilled at deploying a lot of words to sort of confuse where things actually stand. And in this case, this might be an instance of that. So he said he insisted the border is closed. At the same time, he acknowledged that they are seeing massive numbers and that they are unable to deter or return those massive numbers of people who are crossing without permission. And his point is that, hey, we're trying to process them as quickly as possible, but yeah, we're overwhelmed. The latest numbers show we're talking about, I think it's on the order of 60,000 people who jumped the border in last month in April and who were not pushed back across the border immediately, who have been essentially admitted and told, hey, come see us in a few years. We're going to try and process your cases and see about getting you out of here. One of the other things that came up in this hearing was the reporting by another newspaper, the Washington Post, had a story about, you and I've talked about in the past, but they calculated that given the current pace of deportations and the fact there are about 6,000 deportation officers at ICE, they are averaging one deportation every 2 months. Every officer, these are guys, this isn't like police beat cops where you're out there and if you don't make any arrests, that's a good day because it means there is no crime. These are people there are 11 million illegal immigrants in the country. There are plenty of targets for ICE officers to go after. According to the Washington Post calculations, ICE officers are nabbing one person every 2 months. And Mayorkas' answer to that was, well, we're working smarter, not faster and not more. We're going for quality over quantity. It's interesting. This hearing has been like many of the hearings that happen on immigration on Capitol Hill. They're very eye-opening because you really do have Democrats who believe that immigration enforcement should happen rarely, if ever. And you have Republicans who are looking at the law that says these folks are here without authorization and under the law should be ousted and are wondering why we aren't doing that. In the past administration, you had an administration that agreed with that Republican view and was like, yeah, we're trying our best. Obviously, there are a lot of people here and we're not going to be able to get to all of them. But when we do come across them, they should be ousted. The current administration's position diametrically opposed. It is no, all of the 11 million, we don't care about them. Small subset of people who we believe have serious criminal records. Those are the only people that we believe that are unlawfully here that the law should apply to. There's no sort of way out of that, and the number is just going to continue to grow in terms of that backlog of people that are here.
Border agent charged with smuggling migrants. DHS says this agent was no rookie, right?
Yeah, in 2008, I believe, that he started. And you and I talked about the smuggling economy. One of the key points, we have the border, the boundary between the U.S. and Mexico, but they're really, and then there's wall along some of that and technology and whatnot. But there is a second wall, and that is a series of checkpoints that exist along the highways, California, New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas. And the area is so big and much of it is so remote that there really are, in some areas, only a few roads that you can really take to get from the border communities, Laredo and Brownsville, Dallas in Arizona, to get to Phoenix and whatnot. There really are some routes you have to take. And so the Border Patrol mans checkpoints on those roads. It acts as a secondary wall. In this case, the authorities say that a Border Patrol agent was working with smugglers. He would tell the smugglers which lane of those checkpoints, and they're highway checkpoints. Some of them have a number of lanes, but cars stack up as they go through there. He would tell the smugglers which checkpoint he was working on certain days, and they knew they would drive their people through that lane and he would never do the inspection. He would just basically wave all the cars through. It's not clear from the indictment whether he knew which cars actually were the smugglers, or whether he was just paid to wave everybody, all the cars through and not check anybody. But according to the indictment, he took money and basically created a hole in that secondary wall every day that he was working there. So it's really stunning. It'll be fascinating to see whether we find out exactly how much he was paid.
Yeah.
And, all of those details. Right now, we don't have those. It's just an indictment. But he has been suspended from duties, which is a pretty severe thing for CBP to do. Oftentimes, they'll allow people to, just be shuffled to a different job. But in this case, he's been suspended from duties. And, you and I have talked about a couple of these cases. Just a couple weeks ago, a CBP officer, so that's not a Border Patrol agent, that's somebody who mans the ports of entry, a CBP officer. She pleaded guilty to a case that you and I have talked about where she was smuggling in her nanny, or a woman that she was using for nanny services.
That's
a woman
right.
who lived in Mexico, and she was basically just waving her in through the port of entry and taking her to her home where she acts as a nanny. And we, the other case that's popped up recently is that Citizenship and Immigration Services, so a different agency, but still within Homeland Security, the Citizenship and Immigration Services immigration officer who lied on his own asylum and citizenship applications, and his wife, who is a fraud detection officer at that same agency, and according to the authorities, was aware of his fraud. So, obviously, Homeland Security is a sprawling agency. Maybe not surprising that there are some bad apples in there. But in each of those cases, those are people who are using their immigration powers specifically to go against the specific law that they are supposed to be enforcing.
Mm-hmm. No-bid contract to house immigrants under new scrutiny. What is this all about?
So this is a contract for a company called Endeavors, and they actually have two contracts, one with ICE, which is the deportation office within Homeland Security, and one with Health and Human Services, which handles the illegal immigrant children. Once they're turned over from DHS, they go to these shelters run by Health and Human Services. The Homeland Security Inspector General is going to review the contract that Endeavors has. I think it's between $80 and $90 billion with ICE. The Republicans were stunned when they saw this contract be let. It was a no-bid contract. Endeavors has never done work with ICE. They've done some work with HHS, but they've never done work with ICE in the past. The key thing that has people wondering about this is that on Inauguration Day, Endeavors announced that they had hired a former top ICE official, and then a couple weeks later, suddenly this contract appears that it's orders of magnitude higher than any that Endeavors has done for the government before. And as I said, it's a brand new thing to work with ICE. There are other companies that have done this work with ICE, but they were passed over for this no-bid contract with Endeavors. And I'll be very interested to see what the Inspector General comes back with, whether there was a valid justification for this. They struggled. They're using hotels to house some of the migrants that are being released to their custody, and they were struggling to try and get enough hotels to agree to house them because of this pressure on a lot of businesses not to be involved with anything dealing with ICE. There are a lot of questions about the contract, whether they were up for it and how they're performing, and it'll be fascinating to see the Homeland Security Inspector General and what they return with.
Yeah. All right, before I let you run, what are you working on?
You and I talked about this briefly in the past, and I'm finally getting ready to run one of my favorite stories. It's on the level of fraud within the pandemic program. There are the cases continue to roll in, and they are just stunning. Everything from the rapper who posted a YouTube made a rap video out of him, apparently, according to prosecutors, filing bogus unemployment applications and actually showing the applications, the fake or the stolen identity applications in his YouTube video to the guy who filed a bunch of loan applications, pandemic loan applications. I think it was for just under $2 million. And according to the prosecutors, he took all that money, invested it in Tesla stock, and when they finally caught up with him in early January, he was worth $13 million because of his smart investments. There's another guy who they say applied for and got $3 million in loans. He invested it in the market and lost it all. So at least we seem to have ended up in the plus side there.
Wow. I look forward to that story. And folks, you can read all of Stephen Dinan's stories at WashingtonTimes.com. As always, thank you, Stephen. We'll do it again.
My pleasure, Andy.
Thanks for joining me today, and remember to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Go to washingtontimes.com/Andy. You'll get 24/7 digital access to the Washington Times at 50% off. Again, go to washingtontimes.com/ANDY. I'm Andy Parks. Have a great day.